Tom Yeakley, my wife Dana and I have been married 44 years and on staff with the Navigators 39 years. Met Christ as a third-year student at Florida State University. I grew up in a nominal Christian home, church-going Methodist, but have on my resume expelled from Sunday school at the age of 13. When asked by a Sunday school teacher, it'd be good if you didn't come back next Sunday. I was a terror. It was just, so one of these days in heaven I'm probably going to have to apologize to a couple of godly women saints who put up with me for a lot of years. So I so admire you working with children, those of you that are here in the church ministry with children in particular. Man, I was one of those, don't give up on us. There's hope. Because if I see them in heaven, they're going to go, "You're here?" It's like, what? They're going to be shocked.
Check the name on the door again.
Exactly. You got the wrong door. You were on the left with the coats over here, not the sheep. So I found Christ at the age of 21. My wife Dana had come to faith earlier through a Baptist church background. At the age of 11, we began dating as juniors in high school. Again, not a growing Christian dating me, a non-Christian, obviously. And her testimony would be she knew she couldn't marry a non-Christian, didn't know she shouldn't date one. But by the grace of God, we had a very moral relationship. When I came to faith during the third year at University of Florida State, Dana rededicated her life to Christ, and off we went together, got married. Spring break of our senior year, after I got accepted to vet school at Purdue, where I studied veterinary medicine and got a doctorate in veterinary medicine and worked as a horse doc for 3 years. During those years, met this organization called the Navigators, what some of you may or may not be familiar with, based out of Colorado Springs. We didn't know anything about them. I just got invited to a prayer meeting at 5:30 in the morning at the student union, and I thought, I can't believe anybody gets up at 5:30 for a prayer meeting. I got to go check these people out. And found a group of about 25 men who loved Jesus with their whole heart, praying and pouring out their hearts before God and praying for the world. And that was so attractive. I wanted to be a part of that. So Dana and I got involved in a Bible study, and things happened. And so got a vision for ministry, a calling, as I know many of you have experienced. And after 3 years of practice, God asked us vocationally to lay down that career and pick up a career vocationally serving Him. We were in Indonesia for 10 plus years, had a heart for the poor and wanted to be in a developing country. And after 3 years of waiting for a visa, got in to Indonesia. We're there for almost just short of 11 years, and then got kicked out of the country because I wouldn't pay a $15,000 bride. Landed back in Chicago, which was the home base for us, and then thought we were going back to Southeast Asia, and I was going to travel into the rice bowl countries of Southeast Asia, out of Malaysia, where the kids were in boarding school. And then God asked us, which was a greater step of faith, to move to Colorado Springs. And I say that not sarcastically. It was sincerely a greater step of faith to move to Colorado Springs than Indonesia. Simply because too many Christians in Colorado Springs. I wanted to be on the cutting edge, pioneering. We'd seen God bless in ways that, why would I do headquarters, just makes my skin crawl. And so, but it was so clear. So just to give you a little insight into my family and my wife's attunement to the Lord, I went for 3 days of interviews, and with pages of questions, hoping one of these is going to be the knockout that's going to give us an excuse to go back to Southeast Asia and not Colorado Springs. And 3 days of interview, everything was green light, green light, green light, come to Colorado Springs. And it's like, oh, Dana's my last hope. So she's back in Chicago, I'm in Colorado. I call her from, if you've been to Glen area, the Castle. I call her, this is pre-cell phone days, and she's my last hope, So Dana, I'm thinking that maybe, but is this the craziest idea ever, hoping she's going to say, it is crazy, we're going back, And she says, oh, Tom, Jesus told me we're moving to Colorado 2 weeks ago. I've already told the kids. So it's just me that's a little slow on the uptake, It's just, so as many of you know, that I married above my pay grade. Yes, so that's our journey. It's been a wonderful journey. We came back, landed in Colorado Springs to join the collegiate team, focus on developing next generation leaders. Dana was invited onto the team as an associate director. A year after that, I'm leading the U.S. collegiate work for the Navigators with 800 staff, and that was, just learning curves. And did that until early 2000. Traveled then for 10 years to Europe, commuting from Colorado, coaching leaders in 5 Western European countries: Germany, Netherlands, UK, France, and Norway. After 10 years, saw leaders emerge. They are now leading their respective countries, and we're starting to do the same thing in Asia, back to Asia now, and was asked to go back to headquarters again and invest in the U.S. work. It was, again, kicking and screaming, not wanting to be back in the U.S. But 4 years ago, it was the perfect fit. It was very clear that the Lord wanted us to do that. Stepped into a vice presidential role in the U.S. leadership team, leading all of our cross-cultural ministries around the world. And yeah, again, just wonderful privilege. And then stepped out of that role in early this year, early 2017. And now Dana and I are back together again, focusing on next generation leadership couples with a mandate to help them thrive in life and leadership, preparing them for contribution. And these would be handpicked, about 15 couples from across our work in the U.S. who will be sitting at the U.S. leadership table probably in the next decade or so. So we get to invest in next generation leaders at this season of our life. I'm 66, Dana's 65. I know I look 45, but it's true. You would say that if you saw Dana. She's much younger looking than she truly is. She's 65. But it's a wonderful privilege to be active and serving the Lord at this season of our life, and especially investing in next generation people, as you all. That's our story. 3 grown married children. I shared earlier today that the shock of this year is that the Lord called our oldest boy home in April at the age of 40. Unexpectedly, heart attack, asymptomatic, just keeled over riding his bike, which he did every day. And so we've been on that grief journey since the middle of April. The Lord is sufficient. His comfort is real. The Lord's people have rallied around us. Again, we're just too many things to enumerate how grateful we are in so many ways. It may sound strange to be grateful, but we are grateful. But grief is real. It's a long journey. We're still journeying in this, and so doing well so far. Joy, Mike's wife, they live 5 minutes from us by walking. 2 teenage boys, 15 and 13, and that we're very vested in. And we're all leaning into the Lord. Everybody's doing well. Nobody's stuck emotionally bitter or angry against God, but huge heartache and emptiness. But we're doing well, so it could be hoped for, I think. But if you think to pray for us, we'd sure appreciate that. Now, with that background, one word of affirmation for you all, especially you pastors. I just want to say thank you for your ministry. You guys have the toughest job in the world. Nobody knows it except you and probably your spouse. The stuff that you have to put up with, the stuff that you deal with, especially in smaller churches. I mean, it's unbelievable demands upon you. So I'm so grateful for your ministry. Thank you on behalf of the kingdom. It's just, yeah, I'm such a fan and so appreciate your sacrifice and your obedience to the calling that you're involved in. I mean, just, yeah, nobody knows the stuff that you do except the Lord, and there'll be reward for that. It's to be worth it one day. The laborer will be rewarded, but it'll be a little later. But you made wise choices. Keep that. So it's a privilege to stand before you today. The other thing I know that's true about all of us serving is that because the laborers are few in the harvest, and the harvest is abundant, we're all beeping on our own taillights. I mean, we're just running. It's challenging to keep up. And so the challenge with that is not just maintaining and, getting into bed every night without committing a felony. That's a major victory, right? But having said that, we want to be leading and ministering from an overflow. We want to have a depth behind us and not just, hanging onto the fingernail or the fingernails to the wall and going down. And so my exhortation to you this morning, or this afternoon now, and my reminder to you is, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get to this point of reserve, given the demands that are real? How are we going to get to be able to minister from an overflow? So that's my reminder to you. And I need a reminder to know when I'm ending.
2:15 is when we're scheduled.
2:15.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we don't get through, you have a handout that I think is fairly self-explanatory. That was the desire of that handout. So most important things first, and then if we get through more than the first important things, then you can read it on your own for your bathroom reading pleasure. Otherwise, round file it or do whatever you do with your handouts. Let me pray for us, and then we'll get started. Father, thank you again for this opportunity to gather. Thank you for the grace that you extend to us, the comfort, the strength to get through each day. Thanks for the calling you have on each of our lives. Thanks for the faith and courage to trust you for that calling. And Lord, I pray that for each of us here this afternoon, there'd be one thing, just one thing, Lord, that you remind us of, that you help us to just find hope in, and perhaps just a real practical application from. That will just help us to build this depth and the longing that we have to have a reserve from which to minister as an overflow from. Lord, we just pray again that you protect us from the evil one. Would you bind him and all of his agents and frustrate his efforts so that we could truly hear your voice this afternoon. And Lord, we pray again that you'd be glorified in all that we do and say. In Christ's name. So, leading from an overflow. I don't know where the top quote came from, but I sure appreciate it. We are to major on the depth of our, everybody have a handout, by the way? I don't want to assume something, okay? So, we are to major on the depth of our relationship with God, and he will take care of the breadth of our influence. So you major on your own walk with him, and he'll see that the platform you have for influence is sufficient for whatever plans he has for you. So take care of home first, and don't worry about the other. Howard Hendricks, I don't know if you know that name, former pastor emeritus, professor emeritus out of Dallas Seminary, said, if it doesn't work at home, don't export it. And so, home base, right? That's what we're talking about. Your walk with the Lord, your depth, then we'll take care of the influence and breadth will take care of itself. And then this Graham Scroggie, who you might know that name if you read some of his commentaries of the like, said to J.O. Sanders, another man of God, all in the presence of Jesus now, who wrote Spiritual Leadership. And if you haven't read that book, or reread that book in the last few years, let me encourage you. Spiritual Leadership, J.O. Sanders. As a young man, Sanders took Scroggie, the aging saint, into his library and showed him all of his books and all the things he was learning and was bragging about all these things. And Scroggie listened and said to him, son, don't sacrifice depth for area. So it's not about breadth, it's about depth. You going deep with Jesus, that's where the overflow comes from. So how do we intentionally pursue that depth? Now, again, the Lord is also interested, invested in this process, and so he will arrange circumstances for depth, like the death of your son at the age of 40. The year before this, it was our 4-year-old granddaughter, who had kidney cancer and had a right kidney removed and a softball-sized mass taken out of her abdomen. That we walked through 8 months of chemo with afterwards, and now, so far, by God's grace, is cancer-free. We thought this year was the year of recovery, and now we've been through the fire, Lord. Now we get, and then 4 months into this year, it was Michael. So, yeah, the Lord has his little proving grounds and training grounds to build depth. But we can also be intentional about that and pursuing depth. And so that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. So concentrate on the core set. First, I keep forgetting I have a PowerPoint here. Concentrate on your core set. What is a core set? I don't know if you know this name, Bobby Clinton, Dr. Bobby Clinton, official name Robert J. Clinton, or J. Robert Clinton. If you've not visited his website, Clinton Library, I think it is worth the insight. Retired Professor Emeritus of Leadership from Fuller Seminary in California. Bobby, as he goes by, probably knows more about what the Bible says about leadership than any man I've ever met. But I was meeting with him one day, just having returned from Indonesia. Now I'm in my 40s at the time. And we were talking about, he was asking me, Tom, what's your goal as you think about the Bible, personal goal? And I said, well, I've got a clear goal. I want to master, to the best of my ability, master the English Bible. Now again, some of you have MDivs and you have language study from Hebrew and Greek. I don't know if you use that still, but some of you are gifted in languages. I'm not gifted in language, but I read books from people who are gifted in language. And so I'm grateful for the commentaries and the expository writings of many of the gifted ones. So I'm trying to say I want to master the English Bible, and I've got a plan on, concentrating in books through and recycling through all my life, as long as God gives me. And Bobby said, how's it going? I said, well, it's kind of frustrating. Because, by the time I work through 66 books and come back around, I've forgotten a lot. And then he listens, and then I said, what do you think? And he says, bad goal. Now I'm kind of rocked. I said, come on now. How can that be a bad goal? He goes, you'll never do it. Because the book that you're trying to master is really not a book. It's a library of 66 books. And what you need to do is concentrate on a few of those books to develop depth and mastery. And, well, that was kind of an interesting thought. And so then it was, well, the next question is, which books, right? He says, well, that's pretty simple. I do simple. Simple is good for me. And he says you should have one of the Gospels, and then the two books that explain Paul's two revelations, the revelation of the Gospel explained in Romans, and the revelation of the body of Christ explained in Ephesians. So one of the Gospels, Romans and Ephesians, and then pick the fourth one. So a minimum of 4. And fourth one, if you really want to know what your fourth one should be, just look where the pages are all torn up in your Bible, where you have the most marks. That's the one you go to all the time. And then beyond that, the more books in your core set, that's your core set, those 4. But then you expand your core set to include more as God gives you influence and platform. Because again, it's ministering from a depth, and the more breadth that you have, the more depth you're going to need. So start with those 4, and then as you get more influence and breadth to minister from, you're going to need more depth, and so add to your core set. That was so helpful for me. So in your core set, this is where you spend your devotional time. This is where you do your memory work from. This is where you do your reading from, over and over and over again. This is where you preach from, given the option. And you go back and you develop depth and mastery over that core set of books. Now, it can be books of the Bible, and you'll see I give you my core set on the next page, and the reasons why they're in my core set, those books. But besides books of the Bible, it can be topics. Perhaps it's leadership, or discipleship, or evangelism, or just whatever is around your strengths, that topic. But you know everything from Genesis to Revelation about that topic, because you've studied it and you've built depth around that topic. It can be a section, like maybe it's the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, for example. Or maybe it's the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13, or Hebrews 11, faith, or the last 30 chapters of Isaiah around the promises of God and the grace of God. Or maybe it's Genesis, especially the creation story, 1 through 3. And just, again, where you go back to, where you find yourself ministering from over and over and over again, that's your core set. And you need to master that core set and codify it and be able to put it in pass-onable form, whatever platform God gives you to pass it on. So topic can be a character of the Bible. Maybe it's Mary. You just want to know everything about Mary, or Nehemiah, or pick one of your heroes, and you know everything there is about that person in the Bible. So again, there's different, it doesn't have to be a book of the Bible. Topics, characters, sections, passages, but it's from that that you minister as an overflow. And you go back to that over and over and over again. So if you look on the second page of your handout, I've given you my course set and a little explanation of where this all came from. Let's see if I've got this in. And again, the goal is not to package ministry. It's depth in your intimacy and walk with Jesus. That's where you overflow from into ministry, right? And so the goal here is concentrate so that you really know the author of the book or passage or character that's being explained in the book, so that there's a depth enough from which to minister to others. And so when asked to speak on, let's say the subject is discipleship, the only question you need to ask is, how long do you want me to speak for? Because you've got this depth, right, that you can pull from. It's just a matter of how much time do I have. And then your problem is selection, because you can't tell them everything you know about that. You only got an hour, or a day, or a weekend. That's depth. And then God platforms you out of that depth. Having said that, as you develop depth in an area or passage or whatever it might be, it also gives you courage to say no when invited to minister in areas that are out of your depth. That you're not using, that's not me. But I might know someone that is good at that, or knows that, or has more depth in that than me. But I just know it's not me. It frees you up, gives you a guilt-free ministry. It's really helpful on that one. You're not obligated to, just because there's a need, you're the one that fulfills it. Because God has other people more talented than you. If you look in my course set on that second page, you'll see, again, my concentration. Let's see how I can explain this simply. Several years ago, this is 25 years ago, I sat before the Lord, again at the influence of Bobby Clinton and a few other leaders in my life, and just took some time to reflect upon what is it that I'm passionate about, that I see God's hand on me in these kind of general areas. And I just am I'm just so motivated. I just don't grow tired when I'm in this area. And I landed on leadership, particularly working with emerging leaders. And it was the nations, that is, seeing the gospel move to peoples that don't know Christ. And then just working with next generation people in particular, emerging leaders. I want to work with the front end before the cement is too far set. Working with mid-career and senior leaders in particular, you have to throw a lot of rocks out of the field before you can replant. And I'm so strategic and practical, I'd like to just work with clear ground instead of having to. Now again, God gives me opportunities to work with all sorts of people at various seasons, but if I have the choice, strategically I want to be the front end of that pipeline, helping emerging leaders set good patterns and develop depth early rather than discovering at the age of 55. So you'll see that colors a lot of the choices. You'll see there's significant leader qualities and or characters: Abraham, Moses, Joshua, Saul, Samuel. Of course, Jesus, the perfect model for developing leaders, with the 12, Timothy, so forth. So that informed my course set. The course set is dynamic. These days it's getting shortened because I'm concentrating more and more in specific areas. And so I was into the whole second coming. That was a whole thing for me for probably 15 years. And Daniel was in there. Daniel's still in here, I think. Is Daniel still in here? No, I took him out. Daniel, the book of Daniel and Revelation, of course, were big, and First Thess was big for me. But then, because I'm not ministering depth in those areas anymore, out of my course set, I'm concentrating now. And the mantra is focus for impact. If you're going to have impact, you've got to focus. You don't want to be a generalist as you go on in life. You've got to develop depth by focusing intentionally to to concentrate your study, your depth into a few areas. And then trust God to give you the platform on how to express that. If you just give him the opportunity, I can almost guarantee you can't plan. You have no idea. I mean, I thought I was going to be a horse doctor, right? That was my plan. I was going to go to the western slope of Colorado, have a horse practice, and do my thing for Jesus on Sundays. That was the plan. I had the plan right here. I was working the plan. All I had to do was finish one more year and graduate. And then head to west of Colorado. And God interrupted that plan in a very radical way when I gave him the opportunity to arrange the plan as he saw fit. Now that's a scary thing, talking about risk-taking, you know. That was a scary thing to say, all right, Lord, here it is. Here's the plan. You know, I'd really like you just to go, good plan, Tom, great, just head to Colorado. And in the meantime, but if you, Lord, if you have anything different than that plan, I give you the opportunity to rearrange the parts. All of it, part of it. Just make it real clear, and I'll follow. But I don't want to get to the end of my life and think, I missed God's best. I think, what a heartache to get to the end of your life and think, man, I was playing in the wrong ball field. Makes my metaphors. Just, I want to get to the end of my life thinking, Lord, I gave my life to what I thought you directed me to as your best for me. And we'll leave the outcome to you, whatever that is. And so, here's the future, here's the plan, Colorado, Lord. And to be honest, I thought I was going to get a telegram from God. This is a while ago, obviously, telegram from God saying urgently needed in some faraway place where you live in a mud hut and work with people with feathers and bones through their nose or something. But God is wiser than that, and wiser than we give him credit for, and it was years, gradually. That heart for vet medicine horses just kind of left, and the heart for people replaced it. A heart for the world replaced it. And if the Lord asked us to go back to vet medicine, I would go kicking and screaming again into that. I'm so grateful. But now I get to work a lot with college students and eat pizza the rest of my life. It's a joy. And people pay me to do this. It's incredible. People invest in us and we get to eat pizza and talk about Jesus. So, core set. Now, again, I'm going to try to make this, if you don't have any questions, we'll move on to the next one. But comments or questions on core set?
What was your first 4 books?
So I have the Gospel of Mark is my one because, again, if you studied harmonies of the Gospel, especially J.T. Robertson's, which is foundational for many of us, he believes Mark was written first, and it's more chronological, action-oriented. Not a lot of didactic teaching passages in Mark, just, Jesus did this, this, and this, and that was the backbone. So I needed to get Jesus' ministry in my head so I could chronologically follow it. So Mark was first, still my favorite. Just as an example on depth, I was speaking to our Dutch staff a couple years ago, and they said, Tom, you've got 4 hours on Jesus and disciple making. Great, 4 hours. I took my Bible, and we went to Mark. Core set, right? And so without notes, and there's nothing good or bad about, but I'm just trying to illustrate here depth. No notes. I started in Mark 1, and in 4 hours we got to the beginning of chapter 2. That's just because I've spent decades in the Gospel of Mark and Jesus and the disciple making. And so that's just a way of illustrating what Mark. Then Romans and Ephesians, right? And then the 4th was Hebrews, because another theme of mine is faith and promises and and I love Hebrews because it's kind of God's New Testament commentary on the whole Old Testament. It just unpacks the Old Testament for you if you understand Hebrews. So Hebrews was in my core set. And then it's gradually changed, and again, I revised it. Again, you see this, my core set was when it was last revised. I don't know what the date of it was. Yeah, so it's been 13 years since I updated that. Probably need to rethink it. But I just cycle through. I quiet time in my core set, memorize out of my core set, preach out of my core set, just write out of my core set.
How long do you go before you update your set? Like,
I don't have a, I wish I could give you every 5 years I review it now. It's just, yes.
You feel like you.
Yeah, when the Lord reminds me, Tom, you haven't been talking about the second coming in years. Probably you ought to just dump those. Oh Lord, really? It's kind of like cutting off your arm. You know, I've invested. But okay, it's not about me or invested. It's about I want to honor the Lord, and I just don't have a platform for that. So, God knows. That's a Hebrew term. Don't take yourself so seriously. Just relax, will you, people? Any other questions on core set or comments? Or you want to take me to task on it? Great. Now, some will ask, well, Tom, what do you do about the rest of the Bible? Well, I read, and that's what we're going to get to next, and I'll show you how that works. So I'm not saying jettison the rest of the Bible and just only your core set. It's all profitable, right?
Right.
So having said that, though, I want to develop depth and concentrate, focus for impact, but I still have to maintain touch and familiarity with the whole of the library, right? Even though I'm concentrated in a few of those books in the library. Any other comments or questions about core set?
I would just like to point out the irony of the fact that you wanted to go to Colorado and didn't want to go to the mud huts, and then later ended up in
I
Indonesia.
know, it's so classic. But the thing is, we went to both of those places kicking and screaming,
Right.
and yet loving it. So after 10 plus years in Indonesia, we applied for Indonesian citizenship. And we're thinking we're going to be there for the cruise. And then once we did that, got kicked out of the country because I wouldn't pay a $15,000 bribe. Then God asked us to go to Colorado. Oh no, not Colorado, Lord. I'm going back to the Southeast Asia. I like rice now. And no, you're going to live in Colorado now. And I'm going to show you my hand on you in Colorado and not Southeast Asia.
Ways and thoughts are high.
The Lord has his ways, yes. And one other comment, just this may
So
be
did
illustrative.
he say you wanted to go to Colorado? Isn't that where you said you wanted to go as a vet?
Yeah, but I didn't want to go there as a Navigator staff person in Colorado. Just, I mean, we've got 140 Christian organizations now that have their headquarters in Colorado Springs. It's crazy. I mean, every other corner is another world headquarters of somebody that you've heard of. And so it's like, Lord, what do we do? I thought the laborers were few. You know? They're all concentrated right here. Let's just leave them and somebody else can do this. But every time I'm ready to pack the U-Haul, it seems like the Lord says, no, I want this is what I want you to do. So again, as we signed on to follow him, you know this. And so just geography is immaterial. It's what the Lord wants for us. And geography is secondary. So we're coming to the graduation at Purdue. And the Lord has asked us to stay at Purdue and get more training from this organization called the Navigators on how to just make disciples. So I don't have a job. And the one horse practice in town I'd interned with as a senior, he had a partner, the guy who owned the practice, and they weren't looking for more help. So I'm thinking, well, I'll flip burgers at McDonald's, or I'll do something, anything, just to provide for my family, because that's the goal, is to get trained in this disciple-making ministry, not work with horses. So about 2 months before graduation, now we made that decision, and then 2 months before graduation, phone rings, and the conversation was something like this: hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so from Grand Junction, Colorado, Western Slope. I've got a horse practice, and I'm a follower of Jesus, and someone gave me your name. And I'd just like to invite you to consider to join me. And we'll serve Christ through this practice, and we'll make a difference on the whole western side of Colorado. Because I've got clientele, I need help, and you've been recommended to me as someone who loves Jesus, and I'd love for you to come join me. I mean, it was the dream. It was right there on the phone. And I said to him, you know, if this phone call had come a little bit ago, this would have been a very exciting phone call. But right now, here's our situation. And he knew of the Navigators, and I explained our decision. And he said, oh, that's a wonderful opportunity. I'm so excited for you. How about if I pray for you? You pray for me on the phone. No. Now, here's what I've since learned about that. That's a pattern that's often repeated.
True.
You make a decision out of obedience and faith to follow Jesus in something, and not long after that, the dream shows up. That will cause you to rethink, is this of the Lord? Maybe, oh, and it's so tempting, but it's just a little off usually. It's just a little, and now it's the opportunity. In fact, again, it's called an integrity check. And the integrity check is, will you follow by faith what you know Jesus has led you to? Because the timing is always suspect, right? It always shows up after you've made the decision, not before. And the question is, will you follow through or compromise and walk by sight instead of by faith? But just watch that. And I coach guys now, leaders that I'm coaching, younger ones, and they're coming to decision points. I watch this one. It's going to show up. Whatever God leads you to do, as soon as you make that decision, guaranteed in a short time after, boy, it's going to show up to test you. And you can just see it repeated over, and over again. If you can see that, if you probably have seen that in your own life, and certainly in those around you. So and just anticipate that and help others anticipate that so they're not surprised by it. All right, core set. Number 2. So we're talking about developing depth, right? And leading from an overflow. So one last comment. The more influence you have as a leader, as a servant of the Lord, the more books and or content you need in your core set, right? Because we're ministering from depth and overflow. So the broader your ministry, the more you need to have from which to draw from. It should be fairly obvious, but I've got a firm grasp of the obvious. All right, so let's get through my core set. Here's my second recommendation for you on building depth. Read and reread your Bible. Now, well, duh. No, I'm talking about reading and rereading your Bible. Now, let me illustrate what I mean by this. So I'm a young missionary in the early 80s in language school in West Java, Bandung, Indonesia. And I meet this older gentleman from another mission agency, and every time I talk to him, there is coming out of his mouth the Bible. And not in a preachy, holier-than-thou, kind of condescending, judgmental way. He couldn't help himself. For lack of a better term, he oozed out of his pores came the Bible. He had so saturated his life with the Scriptures. He had such a mastery of the Scriptures that I never met another person like him. I still have never met another person like him. So I was so intrigued by this gentleman, I took him to lunch with one intention. I need to know how you got this. Give me the secret. There must be a pill or something, some secret sauce or something here. And he says, well, Tom, I'll tell you a story. 25 years ago, I arrived in Indonesia, just like you. As a young missionary, after language school, I was in one of the outer islands. Indonesia's 13,000 islands stretched out along the equator from Singapore to Papua New Guinea and everything in between. I was in one of those outer islands, and it was so remote, we couldn't even get shortwave. I had nothing to do. The people that we were ministering to, were hunters and gatherers, and all day long they were in the jungle. And my ministry didn't begin until they came back at night around the campfire. And so I had nothing to do all day. And so I started the habit of reading my Bible every day. And for the last 25 years, I've read the whole Bible through once a month. I said, say what? I read the whole Bible through once a month. It takes about 2.5 hours a day of reading. I get up about 4:30 and a couple of apples for breakfast, and I read my Bible. And once a month now, for the last 25 years, I've read my Bible through. Once a month. Well, that was a discouraging lunch. I mean, what a nutcase. Who does such a thing, right? No wonder the guy oozed the Bible out of his pores. My goodness, impossible. So I had enough wisdom to ask him one more question. And I said, how do you know how much to read every day? And he said, well, I'm a pretty simple guy. I just count pages and divide by 30 days in a month. And over the years of doing it over again, I kind of break it out into chapters, and I kind of know where it ends now. You know, where to start and where it ends. I thought, oh gosh. I went home thinking, oh, I can't do it, you know. God didn't make me a morning person. I go well at night, but morning's not good, you know, and 2.5 hours a day, I can't do it. But then I thought this. I thought, you know, the New Testament, that's a lot shorter. I bet you I could do the New Testament in a month. So I counted pages, divided by 30, and in 1 month read through the New Testament. And I was so excited that I did it a second month, and a third month. And for the next 8 years, I read through the New Testament once a month. And you know what happened over those 8 years? I could see certain sections of the scripture that I never memorized, but I just read it over and over and over again. So someone would say, parable of the sower, I'd say, Mark 4, top right-hand side of the page, about this far down. Because I saw it. Now, let me just tell you, it messes with your mind when you change your Bible versions. You're all screwed up for a while, let me just tell you. And then, because I was losing touch with the Old Testament, I thought, well, the chronology of the Old Testament kills me. And so I found a chronological list of Old Testament history books in chronological order and formed that into a reading plan. And I would read quarterly, I'd read the Old Testament history in a month. And you repeat that just to keep it in my head. And what that did over the years was just develop depth just through repetition. Now again, you can read through the New Testament in a month in 30 minutes a day. Now that's not speed reading, but that's not stopping to cross-reference and meditate. That's just read, like you read a novel. You can get through the Old Testament history chronologically in 45 minutes a day in 1 month. That's not too hard. 45 minutes, that's doable. Now you got to plan ahead, but you can do that. And through repetition over time, it's amazing the depth that you will develop, the familiarity and the intimacy you'll develop with the scriptures and with the author of the book through that. Just reading. Now every one of us can read. The only thing that's stopping us is discipline to do it. It's how bad do you want it? Now this gentleman, he wanted it 2.5 hours a day, every day, for 25 years. Now let me just close the loop on that story. We were in Indonesia just short of 11 years. He was one of the last persons I saw before I left. I said, Bud, how's that working for you, that Bible reading plan? He goes, Tom, 36 years, still at it, once a month. Unbelievable. What a hero. I want to be like him when I grow up, you know? Just, amazing. So if you look on the third page of your handout, you'll see something like this. This is the Bible reading plan that I created based upon, repetition. Here's how it breaks. It breaks down New Testament 30 minutes a day in a month. Will get you through the whole New Testament. Chronological order of the Old Testament history books, same thing, 45 minutes a day. And you can take this and fold it. I left it in my bag. But I actually, what I do is I put it back to back like this, fold it, and then laminate it, and I just make it as a bookmark and carry it in my bag. So if I'm traveling and doing a reading plan, it's easy but feel free to copy that. I've had ministries taken on, churches taken on, as the whole, challenging everybody in the congregation to read through the New Testament in a month, and then have a celebration when you're done. I've campus ministries who've done this, and they put it on the internet where people sign in and say if they read or not, and then challenge others to join them. And because it's the internet, they had non-Christians in Germany joining them. It was the University of Wisconsin NAB ministry. Non-Christians from Germany found them on the internet, wanted to join the reading plan, and they came to Christ in the month they were reading the New Testament. I mean, just so many crazy stories like that. So anyways, just read and reread your Bible. That's all you got to do to develop depth. Now again, as I'm throwing out these ideas for you, it's not Saul's armor here, okay? Don't try to put on Saul's armor. What we're looking for is just, and this is what I prayed for, one idea. Is there one thing that you can take away from here? Not 5 things, just one thing. And it could be a side comment. It could be somebody else's question. You think, oh, that's it, that's for me today. Don't try to do all this corset, read your New Testament in a month, or just pick one thing out of this and go and be a doer of it, not just a hearer. And God will change you and change those around you because of the depths that you develop. Read and reread your Bible. So, John Sung. Who's read John Sung's biography? You know who John Sung is? Anybody know that name? Contemporary with Watchman Nee. Anybody know Watchman Nee? Normal Christian Life and others. So John Sung was a contemporary, sent from Hong Kong by his Chinese extended family as a non-believer to Ohio State to study chemistry. He got his doctorate in biochemistry from Ohio State, but also found Jesus at Ohio State. And this was in the early 1900s. Stayed for an extra year of theological study, and then took the boat back to Hong Kong. On the boat back to Hong Kong in the middle of the Pacific, took his PhD in chemistry from Ohio State and ripped the diploma up and threw it over the edge of the boat in very dramatic fashion, and confessed to his family when he got off the boat that God had called him to the ministry to preach the gospel and not to teach chemistry in Hong Kong. Well, the family thought he'd literally gone crazy, mentally off, and put him in an asylum in Hong Kong. And for 6 months, he was locked up in the asylum, and he asked for one thing: could you give me my Bible? Which they did. And in 6 months, he read the entire Bible through 40 times. At the end of 6 months, they let him out thinking he was not crazy, just committed. They didn't understand. And then he had this incredible ministry for several decades of an itinerant evangelist throughout Asia. I've had the privilege of preaching in churches that he established through his crusades through the islands of Indonesia in the 20s and 30s. I mean, just, if you haven't read his biography, John Sung, S-U-N-G, it just might change your life. But his reading of the Bible he attributed to the breadth of his influence, and he developed that habit over many, many years, reading and rereading his Bible. Very simple stuff, right? But so inspirational for me. Martin Luther had a habit of reading the Bible through once a year, the entire Bible through once a year, and did that at the end of his life. He said he'd done it 40 sometimes. And so, again, there's various plans. I'm just recommending to you, read and reread your Bible. It's really simple. But you've got to, again, I would suggest concentrate. Maybe it's just read and reread your corset books over and over again. I did that for a number of years as well. Like, for example, I would take, every day I'd read an entire book of Galatians. Just read Galatians every day for a month. I mean, you get to, after 30 times through, you get a good handle on it. And then move to a different book, and so forth. Now again, the longer books, you gotta either allow more time or cut it in half. But you can do that. It's just be creative, and repetition develop that. So read and reread your Bible. Comments, questions, thoughts? Anybody done something like this that you'd recommend for us?
Never in a month, but that's inspiring.
Bud Brown changed my life. Bud Brown, Assembly of God missionary. I was sharing this in a message somewhere in the last 10 years or so. And somebody came out of the audience who knew of him. And he was back now, health broke in Indonesia, back in the U.S. in Springfield, their headquarters, and said that that's his claim to fame. Everybody knows that he reads the Bible through once a month. And at that time, it had been 40-something years he was still doing it. Unbelievable. Yes, sir.
Do you do both of these every month, or do you
No.
kind of switch off? Or?
Yeah, I trade. It's just too much. I can't do it, So, and I use it, what I'll do often, how I'll use it, besides just reading, because I want to remember what I read, is I'll read the section. Let's say I'm doing the New Testament in a month. Read whatever the day of the month is. Read that section, and then I'll journal what I read today, and just one thought. And I'm not a big journaler. I mean, it's a learned discipline for me. So I just write 2 or 3 sentences. But it forces me to rethink. Out of all that I read today, what's one takeaway thought? And that's my devotion. If I'm in this month I'm reading through them. So last year, I decided to up my game, and last year I read through the New Testament once a month for all 12 months, just to get back in touch. That was really, really cool. This year, different fun.
So the Old Testament reading, you're skipping a lot or missing a lot. What's it mean? What are you talking about, the history here?
So it's, again, these are narrative history books that are put in chronological order. So again, it's just the narrative chronological history from the Old Testament. There's obviously a lot more in the Old Testament. But this is just the historical narrative portions, arranged in chronological order. Again, that's not my list. I picked it up from somewhere. I think it was from Moody or something. Found it. It was very helpful.
Tom, this is an awesome thought, and I wish that little nugget had been deposited earlier in my life. Because over the years, there's been certain topics that have come to the surface. Bible prophecy, end time was, when I was young in ministry, was for whatever reason, was passionate about
Yeah,
that.
me too.
And I was, waned from that, but now it's relationships,
Yeah.
marriage.
Yeah,
that.
Ephesians.
Yeah, Ephesians is definitely my best book, but the thought of concentrating on that, I don't know why that's never kind of stuck there. I mean, topically, there's a passion, but focusing intentionally on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for, for me, that's a nugget to take away.
Well,
from
again,
it.
that was Bobby Clinton's exhortation, starting with the core set, and then as I met Bud Brown and the reading piece, that all kind of came together for me. Just concentrate, Tom. Don't try to stay in touch with the breadth. Concentrate, build depth from which to have breadth. It's just so helpful. It transformed me. And again, my own personal Bible study, I'm sure you're in the scriptures for your ministry, public ministry, but for my own depth from which I'm not preparing a message or whatever, leading a Bible study, but my own personal Bible study that I get to choose what I want to study. It's in my core set, over and over. And I keep those notes so that as I go back to it, I'm just building another layer under it, another layer, or to use another illustration, putting another brick in the wall. And it's so familiar to me. That's why I can speak in front of the Dutch, give me 4 hours, and we got through Mark 1. I mean, it's just because you have depth, you just know the text, and you spent time there. Or you know that Bible character. I mean, I know David. I spent time with David. He's a best friend. I can't wait to see him in heaven. And because I've spent so much time with David, I know David from the scriptures. I'm so grateful for that. I spent time with Paul for several years in particular, studying the life of Paul and trying to get a chronology of that and how the books flowed. And when it was done, and I finished my study, I actually cried because it would feel like a death of a friend, It's just I was so familiar with him. And I'm not a crier, okay? So this is not, although in the last since Michael died, I think I've cried more than ever. My kids are impressed. It's like, wow, yeah, we knew you had it in and didn't know you had it in you, I'm not naturally a crier, but that was just because I'd spent so much time with him. He was a personal friend, I felt like. And now his life was over and I was finished with my study and I was missing that time with him. But that's the kind of intimacy we're talking about here. Okay? And that only comes from spending time in the book. And again, it's not mastery of the book. It's the gateway to the author of the book, right? Jesus. So we're not replacing a Christology with a bibliology here. It's Jesus is the center. It's all about Jesus, the author of the Logos, the living word. Comments or questions about read or reread or core set? Something else pop up? All right, now let's see. I'm going to pick and choose here. Going through because we're going to be out of time in 7 minutes. Deepen your prayer life, memorize scripture. You knew that a navigator standing firmly had to talk about scripture memory. Develop an expertise in several areas. Being a jack of all trades is not something to aspire to. Again, it's Paul's exhortation to Timothy in 2 Timothy 1:6. Fan into a flame the gift of God that's been given you.
Yeah.
So you all have gifts, spiritual gifts, strengths that God has given you. They're in embryonic form that God, and you have to apply effort to fan that into flame. You have to intentionally develop those strengths into a roaring flame for the glory of Jesus. So figure out what you're good at and go for it. Develop depth in that area. Expertise. Read and reread good books. So, next page is my recommended leadership reading list. So because I'm focused on leadership and of the writing of leadership books, there is no end, and I contribute to that pile of books personally. I'm often asked, Tom, what are the recommended books on starting a library around the subject of leadership? And this list is continually updated, but this is the latest version of it. This list is obviously edited by me, but it's not, I hold 5 other people investing in this subject of leadership and developing other leaders for their recommendations of books that they would recommend, and then anything that was on 3 of our lists or more then made this list, and that's how the list was compiled. You notice at the top of the reading list is your Bible, the best textbook in the world on leadership. But then the others are divided into, other books recommended are under 2 general categories, concepts and practice. And some are Christian books, some are marketplace, secular business books. And so these are most of the ones there would have stood the test of time, have been around for a while, and are still being used of the Lord to influence people. So I recommended number 1 at the very top there, Spiritual Leadership by J.O. Sanders. It's basically the character of a leader. It's a character study in various character aspects. Max Dupree, Leadership as an Art and Jazz, Leadership Jazz, and so forth. Bennis and Nanis, they're USC leadership profs, secular, but write good stuff, and so forth. Bobby Clinton, Making of a Leader. That's a really good one for younger leaders on the front end in their 20s, trying to help them get a sense of destiny and how God develops people over a lifetime. So again, just multiple books. I'd recommend that for you. I'm often asked, where do I start? You know, there's nothing more discouraging than reading a book and getting to the end of it and saying, wow, that wasn't really helpful. And so, especially leadership books, because there's such a plethora of them out there. Just to help you get started. Then ask somebody who reads broadly what ones that they would recommend. Because you'll get hooked by the title every time. Guaranteed. And just because there's a snappy title doesn't mean it's a good book. Those marketers work real hard at getting the right title to get you to part with your money. So, there you go. Read and reread. So, read good books. I'm not trendy when it comes to books. I tend to read the classics or books that are recommended to me by multiple people. And so I'm not current with the latest cool books for the most part, but I'm looking for books that have stood the test of time. Because again, my reading time is so precious. And again, Sanders' exhortation is leaders are readers. So it's just, you're always entertaining yourself if you've got a book. So maximize those opportunities. I'm on airplanes quite a bit, and so I use that either to work on my laptop or read. And I always have a to be read pile because there's so much coming through the internet now. And I print those articles or whatever those attachments are, sticking them in my to be read folder, and that goes in my briefcase or my bag when I'm traveling, and out it comes and I'm reading. So I sit on the aisle, not on the window. The thrill of looking out the window long ago disappeared. I want to be able to put my legs into the aisle when the flight attendants are not running carts up and down it, and read and work. And so, I use that to get my reading done often on airplanes or this is one of the few places you can get uninterrupted time these days. So just reading. Read your Bible first, and then other reading. Read, and then reread your book. So I read and mark my books. And then if I'm rereading my book, oftentimes I'll just read the marks, sections that I've marked. Just another little tip for those of you that have executive assistants or secretaries. Here's something to keep them busy when you don't have something for them to do. Because that can be a challenge sometimes, especially if you're traveling for a week. And what are you going to do to keep them busy? So what I do is I take my books that I've marked and I give them to my exec, and I say, I want you to create an executive summary of this book. copy out all the pieces that I've marked into a Word doc. And when it's all done, and we work on a little template that we have, when it's all done, I've got a 4-page, 3-page summary of this book that I can hand to someone as I'm coaching them, mentoring them, discipling them. They don't have to read the whole book, but they can read a 3-page summary. Read this and we'll talk about it. So I've got summaries of probably 60, 70 books now. And these are books that have been influential in my life, that because I've had an exec over several years, I can have them help me broaden my influence easily by either if I'm meeting with someone or just send it to them. Because most people have time to read 3 pages and not many people have time to read 250. So that's just another little tip on how to use your books. Read and reread your books, mark your books. And I've got a real simple marking system. Bracket means it's good. Bracket with a check mark, plus, good plus. And then if it's got a star, life changer, I usually sometimes will fold down the corner of the page if it's got a star, because those are the ones I really want to remember. But real simple, bracket, check, star. That's my marking system. Comments, questions about reread books, or anything else? We're running out of time here. I think we're running out of temperature.
Tom, that whole idea of highlighting and passing it on, I just, not too long ago, thinking of spiritual sons and so
Yeah.
forth, you want them to go higher and do
Absolutely.
more than they ever did. That was kind of a word picture that I felt like God gave me, that, you read something or develop something and you highlight that. And so instead of having your son to work through all the minutia, you give them the highlights and immediately you thrust them a little further. I just thought that was interesting as you were the person that.
Again, teaching is my lead spiritual gift, and so I'm constantly in whatever environment I'm in. If I'm reading a book or studying my Bible, I'm always thinking about how to pass it. How to take this, boil it down, simplify it, and then pass it to somebody else. That's just the way God has made me, my design. I'm not suggesting you have to do that, but so I'm always thinking about pass onable forms, simplify, make it clear, make it simple, make it doable, practical. That's just the way I'm wired. Other comments or questions? I think the rest is pretty self-explanatory. Personal time with leaders, seek out mentors. You never outgrow a need for a mentor. You never arrive. I've got 3 men that are 10 years in front of me that I continually spend time with. They have different strengths, and there's the reasons why I've selected each of them, and just to help me know what to anticipate in the next decade, what's coming in front of me. And I usually think about 10 years in front and say, I'm aiming for 75 now, and then we'll reevaluate if we make it to 75. And right now, health is good, and so we'll aim for 75 and then reevaluate. But as they tell me, Tom, 65, 75, no big change physically, unless you have a problem that's obvious, but when you hit 75, things begin to change. And so you'll see diminished physical capacity, mental capacity, and so you need to reevaluate that a little more frequently. But right now, we're just fat, dumb, and happy and going for it.
Under 8, pursue personal time with leaders.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the best questions that you've asked them over the years?
Yeah, one of my favorite questions is, what advice would you wish someone had given you when you were my age? Assuming there's a fairly big. So I'm driving through Singapore with a missionary who's 25 years in front of me at that time, and I'm probably 25. No, I'd be 35 at the time, so he's 60. And I asked him that question. We're in the middle of, if you've ever been to Singapore, I mean, it's chaos traffic, right? And so we're in the middle of Singapore, downtown Singapore. I asked him this question. He hits the brakes. People blowing horns and everything. He pulls over to the side of the road in very dramatic fashion, puts his finger in my nose and says, "Tom, listen to your wife." Yes, sir. Never forgot that one. That was helpful, some of the best advice I've ever been given.
Yeah.
Because he saw in me something that was just like him. And he had nearly lost his family because of his passion for the ministry. And, you know, often our spouses can be good governors for us. Any
It
other
was very
comments or
honorable,
questions?
though. It was honorable of hers. I mean, you were honoring her, so that's.
I was seeking to. That was a good thing. It was me that had the problem, not her. Okay? That's what I was trying
So I
to do.
think sometimes, I think you're absolutely right. I think sometimes our clarity comes from, because of our passion, we almost get cloudy vision. And sometimes it is our spouses that has to go and says, hang on, you're focused on you and not on God. And you're like, no, that's not the, but in actuality, when you sit back and think, I mean, it brings us, she's right, I've taken God out of the picture. I'm chasing my heart, not his through me.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, you know, because guys, okay, us just speaking to us guys here, oftentimes we men, we find our identity in our role, task, mission. And anything that threatens that, we get real defensive. And rather than listening, we just, you know, we fire back. And that's not helpful, especially if the stuff is coming at you from your spouse. And she wants you to succeed. She loves you. She's committed to you. She's in it with you. She's not an impediment. She's a gift. She's a gift and a partner to help you do things you can't even begin to imagine. And if you take advantage of that rather than fight it, it'll change your life and your ministry. Take it from one who knows, and I'll show you my scars.
That's all right.
Anything else before we quit? You've been very patient and very attentive.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for being with us today and doing this. When I heard Tom, when Tom agreed to come here, we thought, well, it'd be great if we could open this up, because I know ministry leaders, pastors, we're always looking for something good. I mean, there's plenty of options out there, and I've been blessed significantly by Tom's ministry over the years. Tonight is at 7 o'clock. Tom's going to be back with, we've invited all the students in our 412 Leadership Training Program, their parents and their mentors. And Tom, the title is something on mentoring tonight, I don't remember the exact
Mentoring
title.
for generations or something.
Yes.
I can't
And
remember the exact title myself.
It's investing in the spiritual generation.
Yes, thank
Investing
you.
in
That's
spiritual
exactly what I was
generations.
speaking.
And we'll be back in the worship center for that. And you're, of course, anyone here, you're welcome to come back if you'd like to join us for that tonight. I think a couple of you already are coming back for that 7 o'clock tonight. So let's see, since we got so many pastors in the room, is there anyone here who'd feel led to close us in a word of prayer? Pastors.
You probably already prayed at least once today, but maybe
Yeah.
twice with the defend Jesus.
Yeah, because if not, I'd be glad to do so. But, and I guess I will. Father, we're privileged to be together here in this room. Thank you for the wisdom that Tom has shared with us and just the nuggets that we've been able to take from this time. I know certainly encouraging to me, nourishing to my soul, and Lord, we really do want depth. We feel like we're running so far in so many different directions at times. And Lord, we pray that you'll enable us and empower us to develop the discipline to do what it is that you've called us to do from this. So Lord, I pray that you'll go with us from this point and allow us to not only develop our relationship with you deeper, but to be able to share these nuggets perhaps with others who could benefit from them as well. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks. Have a great afternoon.